Hello and welcome to the Gifts of Service interview series. This project is brought to you by the Ontario Region of Narcotics Anonymous Fellowship Development Team. In this series, we engage in meaningful conversations with NA members about recovery, service, and the NA program. We've reached out to a wide range of addicts with various amounts of clean time and diverse life experiences. But they all have this in common. They love Narcotics Anonymous and are passionate about carrying our message of hope to the addict who still suffers. For our third episode, I'm joined by Arne H, a former World Board member who has service experience from British Columbia all the way to the Middle East. How did you first experience the NA message?
As a matter of fact, the first message that I experienced was not NA. It was the other program, an answer that will come back to haunt us in a later question. But the first NA message I experienced was, I probably heard it before I was sentenced to go to AA. I heard it in the treatment centers that people dropped me off at. And I heard, all I heard was, I didn't hear it, I overheard it. In other words, it was going on in another room that I wasn't interested in going into. It was going on in the hallway with people who I wasn't interested in meeting or having anything to do with. They were either, they were from some cult, they were Moonies, or there was something genetically wrong with them as far as I was concerned. And hearing them with that stupid language and those stupid catchphrases and those stupid cliches they were throwing around, it was just of no interest to me whatsoever. So I probably overheard the message before I heard the message. And the fact that we call it the message is just continues to be weird for me. The message, it's like something out of Lord of the Rings. Did you hear it? The message from Asgard. But the first time that I heard somebody actually speaking NA, if you will, was in a context that made some sense to me and probably resonated with me, was when I returned to Canada from the United States, and specifically for the reason of trying to get well. And I was going to counseling, not that counseling is necessary, but I wanted to do everything possible when I got back to Canada to eradicate this horrendous disease. So somebody said, you got to go to meetings. I started going to the other program, and somebody said, you can get a counselor. So I got a counselor. They said, you can go to these group sessions after counseling. So I went to the group sessions. I mean, I would do anything. And one of the counselors at one point, after listening to me tell her about my issues, she suggested that I go to NA. And my first experience was at the Nooner, which everybody knows the demographics of a Nooner. It doesn't matter where you are. At least Nooners, when COVID wasn't around and people could go to them, it's generally a fairly kinetic atmosphere at the Nooner, because you've got a lot of people who don't have jobs, who don't work, and then it seems to be a magnet for the NA evangelists as well, that want to get in there and make a difference for themselves. These are the type of people that will walk across the room and offer themselves as a sponsor to you without you even asking. Not even asking how much clean time you have. I'll be your sponsor. So, which is generally the last person you want to sponsor you. So the first experience I had was at the Nooner. I didn't go alone. I had a friend of mine go with me, who was kind enough to offer me a place to stay when I returned from Los Angeles. And he went with me and sat with me through the meeting. He since has needed the program, and he since has passed away as a result of this disease. But that's how I first heard it. That's where I first collected my white key tag. There was about 6 or 7 people there, I think, and it was good. It was a good meeting. I mean, I was later to hear that message in a stronger form, in a more because we always want something a little more pure, right? We instead of the stepped on stuff you get at a meeting, I got the pure stuff when I was fortunate enough to go to treatment and fortunate enough to experience H&I and really get the pure form of the message, you know, and the delivery mechanism went straight to the areas that needed the most attention. So it was that was my first experience with the NA message.
What was your first experience being of service in NA?
I realized early on that in order for me to be as anonymous as possible, without knowing anything about anonymity, but knowing that there was no way in hell that I wanted to be asked to share. I was going to leave this in other people's hands. It was very, I think people thought there was something wrong with me when I first got to meetings, because I made great efforts to sit at the farthest point away from where the meeting was, almost hiding in the corner to make sure, which, in retrospect, those are the people they always pick to share. And as a result, I knew to get the seat I wanted to, which was usually hiding behind a roof support somewhere, I had to get to that meeting early. And it was the nooner. It was the closest place to where I was living. And so I went every day. And I got there early. And when I got there early, the cliche is get to meetings early and leave meetings late. And when I got there early, I would sit and wait in the room, and people would come and they would start setting up. So, I'm not going to sit there like an idiot. I had to help them set up. I mean, I could sit there like an idiot. And oftentimes I did sit there like an idiot, but they, sometimes they would ask the idiot to help them set up, and I would help them set up. And that got to be a ritual, that I would get there early. They knew Arne was going to be there for setup, and I would set up the chairs. And it was selfish of me, because I wanted to make sure that I was in the most remote seating area as possible, so that I didn't have to share, or I wouldn't get asked to share. Now you can't shut me up, but back then there wasn't, and I didn't have anything to say, and I didn't want to sound like an idiot. There were enough idiots putting their hands up to share. I didn't want to be like one of them. But that process helped me learn a lot about, you can learn the things that help you stay clean, the things that contribute to your recovery. You can also learn about the things that are detrimental to your recovery just by listening. And so, to answer your question in the longest possible manner, somebody said, you got a counselor, you do this, you do that, and people are talking about a business meeting and a home group. And so I knew that I had to get a home group, so I made this my home group because it was the closest one to me, and I was going to it regularly. And they said, well, if it's your home group, you have to go to the business meeting. And so I went to the business meeting, and because I was showing up, that weird guy that keeps showing up early to help with the setup, they voted me in to be the setup guy. So now I had a position, and now I had a responsibility, and it made me feel, it was another level of involvement. And I felt like I was a little more part of the machinery. I felt like, you should come to my meeting. This is my meeting. This is where I go. Like my living room or my house. It was a sense of ownership that was really advantageous, I think, to any future recovery. Going on from there, eventually my first exposure to service was the secretary. We had a secretary at that meeting. Only at the nooner would you get a secretary where, they used to hand out the readings, right? They'd put the readings all around the chairs. And if you happened to be one of the people that was sitting close to the readings, well, they'd say, someone read who was an addict, and you've got it there, and you would read it. Not with this secretary, not with the nooner secretary. He didn't hand out any readings. He did all the readings himself. He did all his own readings. Wasn't anybody going to get in the way of him and the reading. So he would read all the readings. And one day, at any rate, this guy didn't show up. The secretary didn't show up. And somebody there just took the secretary book, slapped me in the chest with it and said, "You're secretary." And, you panic. It's like the first time you have to chair a meeting. Well, what do I do? You just read the script, just read it was like I was giving a presentation to the United Nations. This was serious stuff. I didn't have time to study. So I bumbled through this secretary thing. But from then on, I was a secretary for my home group. And I went to great lengths to let people know, I happen to be the secretary here. I don't know if you're aware of that. I'm a little bit of a big wheel. So that was my first experience with service, as being a secretary, making regular attendance, not only to my home group, which I went to every day, but also starting to go to all the business meetings and seeing what a hullabaloo that is. So that was my first experience with service. The end.
No, that's just the beginning. Can you talk a little bit about your service experience over the years, and then maybe tell us about some of your most memorable service experiences?
I've been fortunate enough that my service trajectory, if you will, has included many different positions that I've been honored to have been nominated for and elected to. It's a very humbling experience. I've served at my home group, as I mentioned before. I served at our business meeting for my home group. I ended up making the mistake of, when my sponsor asked me one Wednesday night, "What are you doing?" I made the mistake of saying nothing. So they said, "Great, you're coming with me to do H&I." And this was another getting out of my comfort zone that we moved into. And but I did it. And that's the warning that I normally tell people about H&I, is you need to be very cautious going in to do H&I, because you may not be able to stop. And I wasn't able to stop. Like I just got the H&I bug. It was the most rewarding thing to me to sit in a room full of addicts. And the first place that I went into was the treatment center that I actually went through. Not that we would ever let the individuals there know, but sitting in a room like that with 30 people sitting in a circle, where I had been, 60 days or 90 days before, and thinking that my recovery hadn't moved from where it was when I was in, thinking I had already stalled in recovery, that I wasn't getting any better. And I'm looking around the room at these treatment center people all twitching and moving around in their chairs, and thinking, what's the matter with them? And my sponsor said, "That was you like 60 days ago." You were sitting doing the same thing in those chairs. And to be able to do that kind of service to people who are not familiar with our program, and to sit there in a room and to look into their eyes and before the meeting starts and just see that dead, gray, hopeless look without light in their faces, in their eyes, and then have the meeting begin. And it may be when you share, or it may be when someone else shares. But to look around the room and gradually see people start paying attention, and then gradually actually see people get it, see someone get it, and you can see it in their eyes. And when you're there for that, when you're in the room for that, and like I said, maybe it's not when you're sharing, maybe it's when, you know, somebody else has come in and you're just looking just to be present for that. When you see that spark get lit, like it was lit for me, that spark that you can't extinguish no matter what you do, that initial recognition that, oh my God, these people are just like me, and they're clean, and they brush their teeth, and they look like they're happy. That continues to be just an amazing moment in service for me. Not only that, but the residual effect of that is, and it's happened to me, and anyone who's done H&I will be familiar with this story, where you're going to a meeting and you really don't want to go. It's raining outside, or it's snowing outside, or there's a hurricane, or there was just an earthquake or something, some disaster, and everything's going wrong, and you backed over your dog in the driveway, and your girlfriend said, see ya, I'm leaving, and you got fired from your job, and it couldn't get any worse. And you know that, well, this is what meetings are for. This is what the steps are for. And it's, you know, I want to set a good example. So you end up going to a meeting, and you go to that meeting, and it's just it's the shittiest meeting you've ever been to. You'd much prefer to have dental surgery without anesthetic, but it goes on and on and on. You just want the thing to end and get home and pretend like you never went in the first place. And yet at the end of it, somebody comes up and asks you if you remember them. And at first, you want to make sure that they're not involved with the criminal justice system. But you know, usually I would usually say, "I'm sorry, I'm not sure." You know, to begin with, actually, I didn't do that. You go, "Oh yes, hi, how are you?" No idea who they are, but they would. Periodically, you'd get someone who would say, you came and spoke at the treatment center I was in, or the detox I was in, or the prison I was in, or the pre-trial that I was in a couple of months ago. And I got out, and I have 30 days clean today. And that is just, if there isn't, you know, there isn't really, World Services has yet to invent a magic wand that turns your day around. But that kind of experience is something that will, I mean, it's a disease of perspective. And that kind of experience changes people's perspective, certainly changed mine on many occasions immediately. And to be able to tell someone, you just made my day. And really mean it. You know, you just made my day. All this stuff is of value. All this stuff meant something. I've had the experience of doing H&I, being an H&I panel leader, being involved in the H&I subcommittee as an H&I secretary, H&I chair, regional H&I chair, eventually having the opportunity to go to the World Service Conference, which was mind-boggling for me to sit in a room where the entire global representation of Narcotics Anonymous is sitting. It's hard to explain. When regional delegates used to come back, they used to bring these reports and pieces of paper and news that was, it was kind of boring, actually. It was, well, we did this and we did this. I think a regional delegate's job is not just to convey information, but to really try to get the spirit of what's going on, to try to bring back to the region and to anyone who will listen. You have no idea where I've been. It's like when I got sentenced to go to the program, it's like me after the first meeting going back to the crack house I was living in and saying, you have no idea where I've been. It didn't go over well, but that, I guess for me, that's what I've always enjoyed doing, is coming back and trying to light that candle in other people and try to convey the excitement and the emotion of what was going on. I ended up, when I was an alternate RD, taking lots of pictures. Like people like me had never been to World Services, had never seen that. I thought it was the Wizard of Oz. I thought it was the Emerald Castle. I thought it was just hard to imagine. So bringing back pictures to people saying, this is what the office looks like. This is where we meet. This is the United Nations of Narcotics Anonymous. Here are the bleachers. Those are translation booths. This person is the executive director. This guy is from Italy. This guy is from Iran. This guy, and bringing back pictures, and people they soaked it up. And I soaked it up, I couldn't, I was bathing in the Kool-Aid by then. So that experience is certainly memorable. And when I got the opportunity to be a regional delegate and bring an alternate for the first time to the World Service Conference and live vicariously through her, Val, I'm talking about Val, reel it in. And just watching her cry all day long, from the moment the plane landed, she's in tears, and then we're meeting other delegates, she's in tears. We get to go to the World Service office, she's in tears. Like it was wonderful, a wonderful experience, and to have the opportunity to serve World Services and to serve at that level for an additional 12 years following that was another special eye-opening 12 years. It was to be able to see the machinery, to understand the machinery, to better understand the global demographics of the fellowship, to have the opportunity to help other regions in other parts of the globe was very special. And to meet addicts who were from culturally completely different. When we talk about, in our Who is an Addict, we have no fees, dues. We're not, it doesn't matter how much you make or who you are, what religion you are, what sex you are, what sex you want to be. It doesn't, to meet a wider variety of people than I would ever meet at my nooner meeting was very special. And to see the ripple effect of what this program can do in languages other than English, in countries with that may never have the wherewithal that we have the luxury of having in North America, who really appreciate the assistance that they receive from the NA community that contribute to World Services. So in turn, World Services contributes to them on the fellowship's behalf. It's just to see global gratitude on that scale is pretty life-changing. And I don't want to leave out the opportunity to one of the most memorable experiences for me in any service is the people that I got to serve with, the people that I got to rub shoulders with and gain so much from. And serving at World Services, you get to see what a lot of people don't see, and that is the incredible staff that Narcotics Anonymous has selflessly serving at the office in Los Angeles that just go beyond anything imaginable. And to be introduced to them, to be familiar with them, to get to work with them, to learn from them, and to rely on them. We really have an amazing hope machine. That's what we're doing. I mean, we sell hope. We're salesmen. We're hope salesmen.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience when you were on the board going to the Middle East?
Yes. I was living in Vancouver at the time. I remember I was driving down the street. It was a sunny day with the top down. I was married at the time. And I got a phone call from the chair of the board. And he said, like my sponsor said, "What are you doing Wednesday?" And I should have learned from that, but I didn't. He said, "What are you doing in April?" And there I go. "Well, I have nothing planned." "Why?" "You're going to the Middle East." And I said, and I heard this voice on the other side of the car going, "You are not going to the Middle East." And so there was some convincing that had to go on. But eventually I got on a plane I'd never been in the Middle East before, but we were facilitating the first Middle East convention, bringing together, which is often what we try to do at World Services. It isn't to go out there and fix everything, but to introduce communities to other regions that are close to them, that can be an asset to them and a resource for them in their development. So that's what we went out there for. I got on a plane in Vancouver for a 24-hour flight. I don't know how long it was. It seemed like it was 24 years. But eventually landing in Cairo. And, when you're on the board, you're in a bubble. Like everybody's, somebody's going to pick you up, somebody's going to drop you off. This is your itinerary. This is where you're going. You're going to be here at 1 o'clock. Then we've got a lunch over here. And so they said, we're going to have somebody pick you up from the airport. Great, fantastic. So, and I landed at Cairo and got off the plane, and there's nobody there. There was nobody at the airport, and I don't speak Arabic, and everything is in Arabic, and there are animals in the airport, and it was like somebody had put me into that bar room scene in the first Star Wars. That's kind of what it felt like, and I was completely out of my element. And some fellow came over and said, my friend, and once again, did I speak at your treatment center or something? He said, asked me, where I was going, and I knew the hotel. I had it written down on a piece of paper. "Oh, my brother, he'll take you to the hotel." And I just went with it. It could have been anything. He ended up giving me to his brother, and his brother ended up stuffing me in the back of a some kind of a vehicle, and off we went. And he took me to the hotel, and the whole experience was weird. I'd been on a plane for 24 hours. My sponsor was also there doing service. We met upstairs at the hotel as I landed. It was the middle of the night. He said, "Great, we're going to a meeting." We headed out to a meeting. Beforehand, we had to have some Turkish coffee, which I thought it was just normal coffee. It's just another word for jet fuel, apparently, and ended up having some of that, going to this meeting at a night. And in Egypt at that point, there wasn't a relationship with the government. They were trying to establish that. So they couldn't have meetings like we do. Like we have the luxury of just going down to the local corner or community center. They had to have it in facilities. And this one was in an Egyptian mental hospital. So I've just been on a plane for 24 hours. It's the middle of the night. I'm in Cairo in an Egyptian mental hospital. Don't want to get off on the wrong floor. Sitting in a meeting of NA with my sponsor. Now, if you told me that, before I got clean, we would have had a good laugh. But it was an amazing experience to be there, to meet everyone. And even though the readings were in a different language and the language was in a different language, we knew exactly what people were saying, and we knew what the readings were. And when someone got up to take a 30-day key tag, and he was asked to share, and the tears are streaming down his cheeks, and everybody's dressed in their Arabic garments, it was really emotional. One of the highlights of the trip, there were so many highlights because we went to Cairo, we did some work in Alexandria, then we went to Bahrain, and we went to Kuwait. When we were in Bahrain, one of the gentleman who was in charge of H&I asked the chair and I if we would come and do some H&I. There was a men's prison on the Red Sea, and would we come in to make an H&I presentation? And so we jumped at the opportunity. This is great. So, and he gave us his card, the H&I chair, which said, "President of the Message Carriers of Narcotics Anonymous." We say, you might want to change the wording on that card a little bit. But we went to this facility, drove what seemed like forever out in the desert, and ended up at this large men's prison. When we went in, as we were going there, the fellow was telling us that they had such a great relationship with the prison. And certainly as we arrived, the commandant or the warden, the fellow that ran it, it was kind of a military operation. He said he wanted to meet us, or the guard said, "Yeah, he wants to meet you guys." So we all went up to his office, and he's got his people bringing us tea, as they do there, very, very sweet tea, and biscuits. And we're sitting with this fellow having tea, and he's telling us, we love Narcotics Anonymous here. And he knew that we were on the board, and he wanted to make sure that he communicated that to us, that we could take back to the office and to the fellowship in general. He said, "We love Narcotics Anonymous here. There's a room that we've made," and he's got all his military uniform on and everything. And he said, "There's a room that we've made for NA downstairs. And it's so popular, we're going to have another room, and we're going to build another room to have more meetings in. And we love Narcotics Anonymous so much that I have our people read the Just for Today over the loudspeakers every morning." Wow. So, we're blown away by this guy. He said, "Have a good meeting," and says goodbye. And we go down to this room, and the room that they had was, it was a fairly big room, but you couldn't really tell because the walls were all covered with NA stuff, NA memorabilia, NA posters, NA readings, and anything they could get their hands on. that had to do with NA. It was all over the walls. They had cassette tapes of speakers that were, some of them were broken. You could see that they'd use Scotch tape to put them together. They were probably in languages they didn't understand. But the room was packed with people that were well, you know what? Anybody in prison is driven to NA. Everybody understands what powerlessness is in there. But these guys were very genuine, and we did our presentation, and it was, it was just, once again, it was just great to be in the room, to finish sharing, to not be sharing and watching while other people were sharing, and get to look around the room and see that spark happen, see that flame get lit. When we left, they presented us with this gift, and they had made the NA symbol about the base and rising to a point of freedom. And they'd made it out of toilet paper rolls and string and elastic bands. And it was, it was a weird looking thing is what it was. And so we said, great, we'll take it back to the office. We will put it in the office so that everybody can see it. And we, tried to take it out, and the guard said, like, fuck, you're taking it out. So, they wanted to go through it and make sure that obviously there was no contraband in it or whatever. But we took it out and we ended up bringing it back. It was a really a special trip. And, one of the things that that you can almost make a general suggestion to people to make in their lives, let alone in their recovery, is when I rolled off the board, they had the board members who were rolling off give any tips that they want to the new board members that were coming on. And my suggestion was simply, you got to take lots of pictures. Take as many pictures as you can, because some of the places you go, you'll look back, these are life-changing experiences. And to be able to look back at the pictures, as I do often, I remember that guy, I remember that night, I remember that place, I remember that treatment center, I remember that drive in the car, and that's what I did for this trip. That's what I do on all my trips, because sometimes we live in a program where people, there's always somebody coming in, there's always somebody going out. And I've got lots of pictures of people who aren't with us anymore. Some of them left clean, some of them didn't. But that too is important for me to look back and and remember. It was a great trip. It was one of many trips. I had an opportunity to go back there again and make other trips in Europe, and of course all over North America. And every trip is special.
So we have a couple of minutes left. Is there anything that you want to share or you think is important to talk about in regards to being of service in NA?
Well, I was exposed to the other fellowship before I was exposed to this one. And I went to both fellowships for the first 5 years, had home groups in both fellowships. I did not do service in the other fellowship, and I didn't have a sponsor in the other fellowship. But some of the residual effects of that were, I'm not one of the nurturing, hold your hand kind of sponsors. You're either going to do it or you're not. And that's kind of, I think that's a byproduct of the other program in a way. So, there are people who are drowning in the water. We are fortunate enough to be in this lifeboat. And if I'm going to help you in, it's up to you to stay here. But if you want to jump back in the water, knock yourself out. I'm not going to get in your way. If you want to find a way to justify your own death, then knock yourself out. People need to come here really wanting to be here, not just wanting to be here, but people need to come here like I did, not just wanting, but willing to do the work to stay here.
Right.
And that is getting in the lifeboat and saying, what can I do? And they always say, well, you get an oar and you start rowing and you start helping other people on the boat. And it's worked for me up till now, so I don't want to fuck with the formula.
Any closing remarks you'd like to add?
If there's anyone who's listening to this, or if it's a video, God help you. And if there's anyone who's, if it's not a video, I could tell you right now, I bear a striking resemblance to Brad Pitt. So you can get that picture out of your head. But if there's anyone who's new, just welcome to the most expensive club in the world. And people who get clean here and stay here are people who get involved in the program. And by that, I mean doing service. And service isn't something that's separate from recovery. It's a 12-step program, and we come here and we do the steps, and we get a home group, and we get a sponsor, and we do service. That's why when people take medallions in Narcotics Anonymous, the word service is on the back of the medallion. And don't tell me, I share at meetings, that's service. Don't give me that. Don't tell me I sponsor people, that's service. Don't give me that. This is about getting elected service positions. I don't sponsor people who don't have an elected service position because it's the only way I know how to get clean. It's the only way I know how to stay clean. So if you're new here, great, get a job. And we've got lots of jobs, and we'll create one for you, but it will help you in ways that I can't explain, but you'll learn about it later. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Arne.